So today we are discussing the science of depression and how to conquer it. In this talk, I will provide an overview of the science of depression and its various facets, including the causes, neurobiology, treatment options, and strategies to conquer it. By fostering understanding and empathy, the talk aims to reduce stigma, encourage open conversations about mental health, and empower individuals with the knowledge and tools necessary to manage and overcome depression. So let's get started. And remember, curiosity is the key to unlocking the wonders of science. So don't hesitate to ask questions or share your thoughts after the talk. Before moving in today's talk, let me introduce myself. I am a cancer immunologist, educator, and science communicator. I write 2 newsletters which are free to subscribe, and please do check them out. And I also do a science book club on Meetup. We meet once in a month, and this month we are discussing Breath, the New Science of Lost Art by James Nestor. So if you are interested, please do join us on May 25th. I have another important announcement to make. Our new website, curiousandcreativelab.ca, went live last week. I encourage you to check it out and explore the various features, including information about our mission, the services we offer, and more. If you are interested in any of our services, don't hesitate to book your first 30-minute consultation session through the website. And we look forward to hearing from you. Now let's move into today's topic on the science of depression and ways to conquer it. Listener discretion is advised. Understanding the science behind depression can help someone make informed decisions and feel more in control of their mental health. However, it may induce anxiety or stress in some individuals. So if you believe this might affect you, please skip the initial portion of the presentation. And instead join us in the later half, where I will discuss the scientifically proven strategies for overcoming depression. Mood normally fluctuates, with everyone experiencing highs and lows throughout their lives. However, some individuals may struggle to bounce back from these low points. It's important to recognize that this difficulty is not a reflection of personal weakness or failure. Depression is a genuine medical condition, as real as diabetes, and it has biological underpinnings. It's not a personal failing, but rather a complex interplay of genetic, biological, psychological, and environmental factors that contributes to its development and persistence. Depression can be clinically categorized into different forms, depending upon the duration and the cyclic pattern of symptoms. So if the symptoms of depressed mood or loss of interest interfere with daily activities and last for at least 2 weeks, then clinically it is recognized as major depression. If the symptoms of depressed mood or loss of interest last for 2 years at least, then it is under persistent depressive disorder. Then there is depression, which begins during pregnancy, which is prenatal depression, and depression that begins after the baby is born, which is postpartum depression. These are related to hormonal changes happening in the mother's body. Some people feel depressed around seasonal changes, with symptoms typically starting in the late fall and early winter, and it goes away during the spring and summer. And some depressions are associated with symptoms of psychosis, or it is comorbid with other mental conditions. So when I will be discussing about the symptoms, there will be a mention of suicide, which is a sensitive topic, so listener discretion is advised. Early recognition of symptoms is essential in the battle against depression. With that in mind, let's understand the different symptoms associated with depression. So number first is anhedonia, which is the absence of pleasure. There is nothing which brings joy or pleasure, not good fortune, not a promotion, not an achievement. So if you're facing this, that's the very early sign of depression. And then there's grief, sorrow, loss, hopelessness, obsessing over actions that went wrong, delusional thinking. Then there is guilt, blaming yourself for failures, both perceived and real, blaming yourself for blaming yourself, and blaming yourself for feeling sad and unable to do what you should be doing. Then self injury, injuring oneself, be it cutting, suicide, or some other form of self inflicted pain. Suicide is one of the top causes of death in teenagers. Then psychomotor retardation, where everything is exhausting to do, to think, to move. Getting going is unbelievably hard. At a chemical level, this likely has to do with insufficient dopamine. So dopamine is a reward. It's recognized as a reward chemical, but dopamine does more. It is a motivational chemical. So it gives you it motivates you to do things. So in case of depression, dopamine levels are very low. And so you are not motivated to do tasks. And when you are doubting that the reward will happen, you get no dopamine. So this cycle continues. Then there are other symptoms like vegetative symptoms, where the physiological data from people suffering a major depression demonstrates a strong stress response and does so even when the person is sleeping. I will talk about the stress response in detail in coming slides. So there will be sleep changes. People with depression will often wake up early and they will remain in stress response during sleep. So this is not get over it. This is pure biology. Loss of appetite is common. Activation of stress response, which is like your sympathetic nervous system gets fired up. There's a lot of adrenaline. Glucocorticoids, which are the stress hormones, are pouring out. Outwardly, the person looks lazy and tired and like nothing's is going on. But inside the body is going through a massive stress response that is similar to what your body would be doing if you are fleeing an armed assailant all the time. So this was the symptoms. Now, although men, women, and people of all genders can feel depressed, how they express those symptoms and the behaviors they use to cope with them may differ. So it is essential to recognize that these differences are necessary to ensure accurate diagnosis and appropriate treatment. So in case of men, they may show symptoms other than sadness, instead seemingly angry or irritable. And they generally, they are more likely to use alcohol or drugs to help them cope with these symptoms. And men experiencing depression might engage in reckless or risk-taking behavior, such as substance abuse, dangerous driving, unsafe sexual practices. And it will often accompany with physical problems like a racing heart, tightened chest, ongoing headaches, digestive issues, and there will be reluctance to acknowledge the feelings. So this is what all happened with men going with depression. Now let's look at the women part. So with increased feeling of guilt and worthlessness, so women with depression may be more likely to experience intense feelings of guilt, worthlessness, self-blame, and there will be a lot of anxiety, excessive worrying, restlessness, feeling of nervousness, and it will be associated with somatic complaints, which look like loss, changes in appetite, sleep patterns, fatigue, or pain. So now, who gets depression? It is important to remember that depression is a complex mental health condition, and no single factor guarantees that someone will or will not develop it. It is like a combination of genetic, biological, environmental, and personal factors contribute to an individual's risk of experiencing depression. But being said that, women are about twice as likely at the risk of depression as compared to men. And why that? We will discuss that in next slide. So men are at greater risk of depression symptoms being undiagnosed or untreated. We know why, because they are unable to express those feelings. And there is genetic factor also, a degree of heritability. So studies have shown that depression has a heritability of around 30 to 40%, indicating that genetics play a significant role in the disorder. But that's not the sole determinant. So there is an interplay of nature and nurture. So if you are carrying a genetic, a gene which is making you more prone to depression, it totally depends on how the nurture is playing role there. So if you have a bad gene, add in major stressors and your chance of getting risk of depression increases 30-fold. So, and glucocorticoids, which are the stress hormones, they also regulate the expression of these faulty genes, which are responsible for depression. So this is like a vicious cycle which goes on. And then it's individuals during midlife, due to hormonal changes, life transitions, or age-related health issues are at higher risk of depression. Then individuals with certain personality traits, such as low self-esteem, pessimism, or high level of anxiety, may be more susceptible to depression. And some stressful or traumatic life events, such as the loss of loved one, divorce, job loss, or physical or emotional abuse, can trigger depression in some individuals. Then there are factors like social isolation, low economic status, lack of social support, or exposure to violence can also increase the risk of depression. Then substance use. The misuse of alcohol, drugs, or certain medications can contribute to depression symptoms. I will not go into the mechanism, but alcohol and drugs, they play with the dopamine or serotonin neurotransmitter levels. So with overuse of these chemicals can disturb the neurochemistry of the brain. So why women are at higher risk of depression? Let's understand this. Several factors contribute to this increased vulnerability, including hormonal fluctuations, which can have a significant impact on mood and overall mental health. Hormone levels fluctuate throughout women's life cycle. This is the graph which is telling you that. So here around puberty, you can see these are two different hormone levels are shown in this graph. And estrogen and progesterone, blue line shows the estrogen and the purple one shows the progesterone. So during puberty, there's a major fluctuation. Then there's the fertile period. I will talk about this. Then during perimenopause, before your menopause starts, you have this phase, which is called the perimenopause, where you have rapid increase and decrease shift in these two hormones going crazy. And this is the period where most women are very prone to depression. And then the postmenopause, where the levels go down, and at times it takes time for your brain to adapt to this low level of estrogen and progesterone. So this fertile period, right? We are talking about this. We all know that this period, every month is a menstrual cycle, and this is the hormone levels up and down going throughout the cycle. So each month, the levels of these hormones rise and fall, bringing with it major mood fluctuations. Some women experience a severe form of premenstrual syndrome, PMS, characterized by significant depression, irritability, and tension. So the exact mechanism is still not very clear. However, there are some hypotheses. Estrogen and progesterone can influence the function of neurotransmitters, such as serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, which play crucial roles in mood regulation. I will shortly discuss in detail the role of these neurotransmitters in depression. Also, estrogen has been shown to modulate the expression of brain-derived neurotropic factors, BDNF in short, and this is important for maintaining the growth and maintenance of neurons in the brain. And it is shown that reduced BDNF levels have been associated with depression. And then hormonal fluctuations can impact the function of body's primary stress response pathway. So in short, these fluctuations of hormones can play with your neurotransmitters and can increase the stress response pathway. Now let's understand the neurobiology of depression. In order to really understand depression, it's important to be aware that the condition has physical aspects as well. Till now, we understood what depression looks like on the outside in terms of a person's behavior. Now we will focus on what depression looks like inside our brain and body. This will substantiate the fact that depression is not just a mood disorder, but a real disease with biological underpinning. What we know right now is that on a chemical level, depression involves neurotransmitters like serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, which can be thought of as messengers that carry signals between brain cells or neurons. Before we proceed, let's take a moment to review some of the fundamental science behind neurons. So the primary functional unit of the nervous system is a cell called neuron. All sensations, movements, thoughts, your memories, learning, and decision-making are the result of the signals that pass through these neurons. These are the neurons here, white matter and your gray matter in the brain. So humans have approximately 86 billion neurons in their brains. And each neuron can form thousands of connections called synapses with other neurons. So this is how your neuron looks, a single neuron. And this is when the two neurons are talking to each other. And this particular formation is called synapse. And when they are talking to each other or when they are in synapse position, they transfer these neurotransmitters. So this is the first one, which is carrying the message. It will take these neurotransmitters and relay it to the next neuron. And this is how your message is transferred from one neuron to the next neuron. And these are the neurotransmitters which I was talking about. And majorly serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine are responsible, like they are dysfunctional in case of depression. So what happens, right? After a neurotransmitter has been dumped into the synapse, it needs to be cleaned up. It can be recycled or flushed out of the body via your cerebrospinal fluid, bloodstream, or urine, etc. So this recycling is very important to understand. Why? Because all the antidepressant drugs actually work on this mechanism. So here, neurotransmitters are lacking, like their levels are low. And when they are recycled, so this is a receptor where this neurotransmitter will emit and will go in, is read by this receptor. And the ones which are not read are actually taken back by the first neuron. So what happens in depression, the reuptake failure happens. And the neuron cannot read the signal. Before reading, it is reuptake by the first neuron. So the signal is lost in between. So let's understand what are the role of different neurotransmitters in depression. So dopamine, as I mentioned, is the motivational neurotransmitter, and it is responsible for anhedonia, the absence of happiness, so the absence of pleasure, and via the root of hopelessness. So if you are hopeless, there's not a whole lot of this is going on. This signaling is lacking. And then norepinephrine, which is responsible for psychomotor retardation. Norepinephrine is essentially a stimulant, which is why it raises your blood pressure. So a deficit leads to lack of stimulation and thus lack of movement and less energy. So these are the roles, like why norepinephrine, lack of norepinephrine, there will be no movement. There will be no connection between the neurons happening and no
Would
signal.
you guys consider jacking off to be a sport? I don't know about you motherfuckers, but I consider that shit to be a sport, okay? If goddamn golf, which is the boringest fucking sport in the world,
Sorry for that. The person has been removed. So then serotonin is there, which is responsible for the grief and the guilt thing. So most of the antidepressant SSRIs, they work on the serotonin pathway. And then very important one is substance P. So substance P is responsible for the pain. Okay. So in case of depression, this substance P neurotransmitter is actually the body is using this neurotransmitter to experience psychic pain. So the pain feels very real. It's not like if you cut yourself, that pain is the physical pain, and during that pain substance P is released. In case of depression, this substance P is overactive, and that's the body encounters pain, the real pain. So this was the theory, and based on this, all the antidepressants work. So this is the monoamine deficiency hypothesis, which states that in case of depression, these neurotransmitters are not working well. And that's why you need to have the drugs which will help to balance these neurotransmitters. So in 1960s, the first tricyclics emerged, which are the MAO inhibitors. And what are these MAO inhibitors? As I mentioned, the recycling of neurotransmitters happen. So when they are recycled, body metabolizes it by using this enzyme. And these inhibitors actually block that enzymatic pathway, and the recycling thing is stopped. So when recycling thing is stopped, the neurotransmitters will stay for a longer in that synaptic activity. And when they are staying longer, the message will be relayed. So that is the whole mechanism behind every antidepressant. And then the SSRIs are there, Prozac, which increases serotonin signaling. It blocks the reuptake of serotonin. This figure will clear something out. So this is the mechanism of the MAOI inhibitors. So what I was telling, this is the first neuron, this is the second neuron. So it is transmitting this neurotransmitter, which is the message. When it is received by the second neuron, the excess neurotransmitters are taken back and they are digested. So this particular inhibitor, antidepressant, work on this enzyme and stops the recycling. And similarly, SSRIs work on serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Now let's understand the neuroanatomy. This was the chemical imbalance and what happens to the brain structure. So in depression, we have like certain part of the brain changes and they are not working well. So to understand this, let's understand this triune brain theory, which states that our brain is divided into three major parts. First is the reptilian brain, which is present in all reptiles, which is the oldest part of our brain. And this part of our brain is handling our day-to-day affairs like respiration, blood pressure, circulation. And it's the so-called reptilian brain, and it's vital for our life. But it doesn't have a whole lot to do with advanced emotions and thinking. Sitting atop the reptilian brain is the limbic brain. This is the main section for emotions, and it talks to the other sections of the brain, to which it triggers responses in the body. Finally, there's the cortex on top. This is the thinking center, and it's capable of triggering a full-on stress response in the rest of the body, and brain through thoughts, which are simply neurotransmitters being dumped over and over again. The more the thoughts happen, the stronger the pathway and more effective the signaling. Thus, a depression is at some level simply the cortex whispering endless sad thoughts to the rest of the brain. And once this starts, the biochemistry shifts until the cortex gets caught in its own trap and cannot think the thoughts because of the signaling is already repeating them endlessly. So if you are confused here, let me clear it out. So this is your limbic brain, which is the emotional center. And this blue part is your neocortex, which is your thinking center. What happens in case of depression? This neocortex is whispering to your limbic brain, which is your emotional center, all that bad thoughts, all obsessive thinking about things which are not happening. So in our body, stress response can get triggered just by thinking. That's the specialty of humans. We can think of a bad thing and stress response will get activated. So neocortex is doing all that obsessive thinking, and limbic brain is following its orders and activating the stress response. And when this is happening chronically on repeated basis, the signaling gets misfired and your stress response gets activated on super high levels in the body, and then it leads to depression. That's the sum of everything. Now, let me tell you what is the stress response. So your brain has given the orders to activate the stress response. Here are your adrenal glands, which are sitting on top of the kidneys. They receive the message and then they secrete all the corticosteroids, which are your stress response. Cortisol in short, which we have heard many times. Cortisol is the stress response, stress hormones. And what these cortisols will do, they will activate the sympathetic nervous system, the flight or fight response in the body. And what this flight and fight response does, it will increase your heart rate. Your heart will start pacing to pump more blood and your muscles can get all that oxygen and all that blood to run, to fly. And your vital organs, like your respiratory rate, will go up and your pupils will dilate to improve your vision and awareness of the surroundings. Muscles will become tense and primed for action. Digestion will slow down temporarily. Reproduction will slow down. The liver will release a lot of glucose in the bloodstream to provide energy to the blood cells, to the body cells. But remember one thing, this is not happening because you have seen some dangerous thing in front. This is happening just by thinking bad things. So your cortex got misfired. Your cortex started on this obsessive thoughts of bad things will happen and all that loop, negative feedback loop happened. And then all this response is happening in your body. Like you have seen a tiger. Your body has prepared to flight or fight in response to that thought process. So this is very important to know that all this biochemistry, all this thing is happening all the time in case of depressive person. The more the exposure of this cortisol, the greater the risk of depression. It's possible that these are the guys that turn ruminating thoughts into the derailed trait of depression. Get yourself a massive stressor, add in the thoughts, and the next thing you know, they are throwing the system out of whack and you don't bounce back. So this is this stress response is evolutionary inbuilt in us to save us, but because of our excessive thinking or sometimes obsessing about things can activate the stress response and it can turn back on us. So the clear example of this can be seen in Cushing syndrome, where a boatload of these glucocorticoids are secreted. And the common side effect of this is depression. And most of the people who are on immunosuppressants, which are also glucocorticoids, the common side effect of these drugs are also depression. So this is the first part of the presentation. Now let's move on to how to conquer depression. So depression, even the most severe cases, can be treated. The earlier treatment begins, the more effective it is. So this is said by a doctor. There are clear differences between a healthy brain and a depressed brain. And the exciting thing is, when you treat that depression effectively, the brain goes back to looking like a healthy brain. So neuroplasticity happens with the right treatment. Now let's understand what are the conventional treatments, and then we will talk about a little bit about the alternative treatments and what nutritional changes or what other mental resilience, how can we develop. So first of all, these were tricyclic antidepressants and MAO inhibitors, which I talked about. These were the first antidepressants, but they come with a lot of side effects. So now there are new inhibitors, which are like SSRIs, not so new, but these are preferred ones because they come with less side effects. But it works in only 1/3 of people. Then there are SNRIs, which work on serotonin and norepinephrine, both of the neurotransmitters. And then there are atypical antidepressants, which have a different mechanism of working. So that's why they have a different category. But basically, they changes the serotonin and the norepinephrine. So all the antidepressants work actually to make your chemical imbalance better. Then there is psychotherapy. So medications help to restore the altered neurotransmitter, but it works with only 50 to 60% of patients respond to that treatment. There can be several reasons for that. And the more important reason is that there are individual differences in brain chemistry. But along with medication, psychotherapy is required, cognitive behavioral therapy, interpersonal, psychodynamic therapy, or hypnotherapy. Then for treatment-resistant depression, there is augmentation strategy, which involves adding another medication. And then there is this new treatment, which is ketamine and esketamine, which are FDA-approved treatments. Ketamine is actually, the mechanism still completely we don't know. But what it does, it blocks a type of synaptic transmission. And then it activates a lot of neuroplasticity. Ketamine is showing very good effects in people who are resistant to other treatments. Then if all this is not working, then a therapist will go for brain stimulation therapies. And these brain stimulation therapies act by activating or inhibiting the brain with electricity. Electricity is given directly through electrodes implanted in the brain or indirectly through electrodes placed on the scalp. So electricity can also be induced by applying magnetic fields to the head. And it comes in different forms: electroconvulsive therapy. A lot of research has been done on this therapy to understand the mechanism, how it works. And we know a lot now. It has the longest history of use. And so there are other new therapies also, which are repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation. Then there is vagus nerve stimulation, magnetic seizure therapy, deep brain stimulation. All these are invasive and it requires surgery. But it works if other treatments are not working well. Then let's look at the alternate therapies. So for people who get depression during the seasonal depression or SAD, then light therapy works. So this treatment involves exposure to light, full spectrum light, for a specific duration each day, usually in the morning. And light therapy works by restoring the circadian rhythm, and it gives the boost of endorphins and reduces the cortisol levels. So actually, light therapy is good for people who don't get enough sleep or don't get like a good night's sleep. Light therapy works for them as well. Then there is biofeedback. So, biofeedback is a technique that teaches individuals to control their physiological responses, such as heart rate, muscle tension, brainwave activity. And as these are the symptoms of elevated stress response in the body, if the person learns to control these, then can help to like control the stress response in the body. And there's art, music, and dance therapy. Support groups help people to just share and discuss about their coping mechanisms, and they receive emotional support. Then animal assisted therapies work well for few people. Dogs or horses can help to improve mood and reduce stress. But all these are alternate therapies. Remember, first and foremost, a person should go for psychotherapy or medications, and then these are the additional supportive therapies. Then let's talk about nutrition for depression. Good nutrition is essential for overall health and physical well being, and it can play a vital role in managing and preventing depression. While no specific diet can cure depression, certain nutrients and dietary patterns have been shown to have a positive impact. So, several studies have suggested that tryptophan supplementation could have a positive impact on mood and depressive symptoms. Why tryptophan? Because tryptophan is the precursor of serotonin. So, to make serotonin in the body, which is the neurotransmitter, which is very important, we need tryptophan. So tryptophan can be found in natural food also. So you can have tryptophan through natural food, or you can have a supplement of tryptophan. And when you eat a lot of carbohydrates, that give you tryptophan also. And then, inflammation is also actually plays a very important role in changing the neurochemistry, and it there are a lot of research going on in the link of inflammation and depression. So increasing essential fatty acids in diet, EPA, 1000 mg EPA, these are from research papers. But when you are changing your diet or taking supplement, just consult a physician before. And omega 3s can be easily found in fatty fish, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts. They actually boost your mood, and they can be eaten by everyone. It's important to have them in your diet. And then the phosphokeratin system in the brain has been shown to be involved in the regulation of mood pathways. So phosphokeratin system, so you can tap on this system by increasing creatinine in your dose, in your diet. So creatinine is an amino acid. And so the research papers have shown that 1 gram to 5 gram creatinine can help to reduce depressive symptoms. But one caveat is, if you are suffering from manic diseases, then this can enhance the symptoms of manic diseases. So if you are not bipolar or manic, then this can help to reduce the depressive symptoms. Then the keto diet actually helps, which can modulate the GABA, and GABA is important for brain regulation. Then, because inflammation is involved in depression, antioxidants can help. Antioxidants can be found in colorful fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, dark chocolate. So this is how depression can be cured. Not cured, actually it's supplements. It can boost your mood, but it is not the first option. It is, all these are supplementary treatment options. And then exercise for depression. So exercise increases norepinephrine. But as I mentioned before, during depression, you don't feel like doing anything. So why I'm talking about exercise? How you can motivate a person who is feeling all that to do exercise. It's tough. But if you take the first step and just do small exercise routines, then it will just boost the energy and boost your norepinephrine levels and help you to stick to the routine. And whenever on days when you are feeling good, you can do exercise, which will help you to get over the bad days. So this can be a good thing. I'm giving this advisory again because I don't want you to take the take home message from here that this is a self treatment guide, but always meant this is just for knowledge purpose, educational purpose, and you should consult your mental health treatment should always be consulted with a practitioner. Now let's understand how can we build the mental resilience. This was all when we are feeling the depressive symptoms or we want to conquer depression. Now, to not go on that path, we all get stressed, we all get anxious all the time. The important thing, as you now must understand, that we have to stop that anxious loop. We have to stop that stress response so it does not carry on in the cycle and activate the stress response chronically. So these are the ways where you can work on and build mental resilience. And I think everyone knows about it, but we forget all the time. So these are to develop strong social connections. So whenever you are feeling sad, you have someone to rely on, just to speak to someone about the bad day can make you feel good. And so practice good self-care. Exercise is very important. Sleep is very important. Manage stress effectively, very important. Close the stress loop. Whenever you are stressed, try to close the stress loop as soon as you can. And how you can do that? By developing problem-solving skills. Foster emotional intelligence. I'm not going into detail, but I can talk on this by giving you scientific-based evidences, by giving you papers on it. So there are a lot of research on these subjects and they are backed by science. So build self-esteem, self-compassion, and always seek professional help when needed. So in summary, overcoming depression is possible with support, self-compassion, and determination. Remember, you are not alone, and many others have successfully navigated this challenging journey. Reach out for help, prioritize your mental well-being, and never lose hope. A brighter future is within your reach. These are the quotes from some of the survivors, like some of the survivors is a wrong word to say, but the people who have coped with depression. So these are the statements from them. If you read that, you will find all this knowledge from their own journey. So I will finish here my talk. Before that, I will just share this YouTube page. I will upload the video on the YouTube page as well for your further reference, or if you want to share with your friends or family members. Thank you. And now I will open the meetup for questions.